Welcome to the Monkeys Fighting Robots podcast with Matthew Sardo.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Holy sh**, they're actually monkeys fighting robots! You can follow us on Twitter at monkeys_robots and on Instagram at monkeys fighting robots. Make sure to download and review our podcast from iTunes and Stitcher. And now, here's your host, Matt.
Welcome to the 97th episode of Monkeys Fighting Robots. Today's episode is going to be brain bashing. EJ and I are talking about the premiere of The Walking Dead. I'm your host, Matthew Sardo. I'm also the co-founder of MonkeysFightingRobots.com. Joining me in the banter is my co-host, movie critic EJ Moreno. EJ, I don't know why I just said your name 3 times in a row, but I'm going to say it one more time. EJ, it's soapbox time. Do you have anything to put on your soapbox?
Not really. I think all that's on my soapbox is from The Walking Dead.
I think I will defer my soapbox so that we can get right into what happened Sunday night. And what happened Sunday night was pretty impressive to some degree and pretty depressing and sad in the other degree and not good.
It's not... Okay, I would say it's good. I'm not going to put it in the great category. It was an okay premiere. I don't think it was revolutionary. It's not going to change my mind on anything, but it was good. It was a solid piece. It got the point across. But I think the major topic we're going to talk about this is it kind of came too late.
No, you just stole all my thunder because you're like, oh, I thought it was great. I thought it was okay, blah, blah. And I was like, for me, I thought the episode was amazing. I thought it was one of the greatest Walking Dead episodes to come out on television, and I'm just going to keep whacking my mic because I'm so excited to talk about this. But the biggest problem with it is this should have been the season finale of 6. If this was the season finale of 6, minds would have been blown, the internet would have fucking broken in half, and everybody would have been like, holy fucking shit, where are they going to take this from here? And now, here it is, October, 6 months later, we're like, oh, that's what happened. Yeah, we've been talking about that for 6 months.
Yeah, it felt like it happened already, and I think maybe, is that a problem with the creators wanting to do a cliffhanger, or is that a problem with the fan-obsessed culture that we live in, that we have to break down everything and look at spoilers and look at things that leaked? Because wait till we get on my leak about the kill that leaked that morning that turned out to not be real. Haha, look at you people. But yeah, I can't believe that, and I don't know who to blame for it. Is it us, or is it them for wanting to do a cliffhanger? I think it's part 50-50, and I really didn't know that's what deflated me from this episode until you mentioned that it came a little too late. And then I'm like, yeah, I really think that's why this didn't have that impact. While I think the deaths looked great and they were brutal and Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performances was great, I will agree with you. There were some really good things about this episode to make it one of the strongest. But yeah, there's just a disconnect there for me, and I was upset.
The one thing that I hate now that I analyze everything, and I think that I blame it on my brain, is I see AMC's like stock prices, and I see AMC's like ratings, and I look at all these things, and they were talking about how Breaking Bad is no longer there, and a couple shows have missed, and all this other stuff. So they're kind of, AMC on the business side is looking for a ratings grab. And that's what I feel they tried to do with this 2-part episode of season finale, season premiere, Negan. And me knowing this is where I start to blame AMC, because this is one of their best TV shows that they have ever. And if they were ballsy and like just threw it out there to people, everybody would have been talking about this all summer long. And what are they going to do? How are they going to go? Like, Rick is destroyed. He's our hero. What's going on? Well, Maggie, all this other stuff. Like, we would have been just feeling that emotion all summer long instead of like, oh, who'd they kill? What's going on? Blah, blah. And, also the industry that we're in, there's no way that we could have not read about spoilers about this, because it's our job to kind of cover it and kind of explain people what's going on in the world of Walking Dead and who's coming back and what's this stuff and here's the mysteries and that's the fine line of what we do. And so, yeah, they just I don't want to steal John Barr's line of fail, but yeah, they failed.
I agree. I think there's a failure there, but I also believe that there is a fine line that journalists need to cross, and I believe in reporting with what they give us. I will never go snoop for a story because that's not how I want to see this industry run. This industry is too obsessed with the numbers, with box office numbers, with ratings. That's not what I care about. I want to see the art itself. And I know that's not what the business people, that's not what AMC thinks is about the art themselves. They want numbers. And I think that's what concerns me here is I don't care about leaks. I don't care about ratings. I just want to see the product that they deliver that night turn out well. And I try to turn off everything that's around me because I don't really care. And I try to focus, but I think that's interfered with me for the first time, that everything I know about Walking Dead and everything that happened around it, all the drama, all the leaks, all the talking that we did that whole summer, it really did hurt that season premiere because there should be more weight to this. There should be more impact. And while it was a good episode, there wasn't that long-lasting impression. Now, some people feel differently. Some people are canceling the show, quitting it for good because it's too crazy and too many people die. So it's interesting to see that reaction.
Yeah, I saw some people were like, "Oh my god, this episode went too far. They I can't believe what they did, blah blah." Were you under a rock? How did you not know this was coming? Like, he showed up with the baseball bat. Did you not think that they were going to do what they were going to do? And people were talking about like Glenn's eye, and he was sitting there trying to talk, and his eye was hanging out, and then Negan was just taunting him and everything, and it was just too much. And I'm like, well, that's exactly what he does. It was verbatim the comic book.
Well, it's verbatim the comic book, and it goes with me feeling that I don't think Walking Dead fans are fans of the horror genre. I think they got into it for a TV show, and they forget that I've seen nihilistic villains like Negan throughout film history. God, foreign films, American films that are underground. There's some sadistic, gross movies, and that's why I think I was also a little desensitized for this, because I was like, yeah, that was brutal, but there could be far worse people. That was just light compared to especially what I think a character like Negan could have done. This was just his introduction. What else could this crazy man do? And I think that was what was intriguing about it, because I think some fans were scared off, and I'm like, oh, now I have something to be interested in.
I said in my quick 2-minute review that I'm so excited for what comes next, because Negan is one of those villains, those epic villains of his stature. He's up there in the Darth Vader-esque, Joker-esque of villains, of just insanity, of evilness. And I can't wait to see where it goes, where it leads, and how they translate this into a live-action version of the show. Because the comic is pretty intense and just starts, it's the comic book is always just running at a rampant pace. But these next issues of the comic book just fly by of what happened and the reaction and all the emotions that go involved and where people want to go and what people want to do. And then, just the death toll that's ahead. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how this season plays out.
But it's interesting because the Walking Dead TV show is not known for being rapid and giving you things quickly. They're known for drawing things out. They drew one explosion out last season through practically the whole season, and it was ridiculous. And so that's what I'm a little worried about, is I don't know if they're going to move this as fast as they should be and as fast as the comics do move, because Negan is a great catalyst for things to happen. That's why things like what Maggie's going to have to go through now, and things like what Rick's going to go through, and even on the other side, what Carol's doing now, and we get to see that in the next episode. There's interesting things that's going to happen. I just want it to move at a good pace, because Walking Dead is not known for being a well-paced TV show.
No, the season finale of last season was like an episode of Lord of the Rings, because they just drove and drove and drove and drove and drove and drove and drove, and then nothing happened until 6 months later. And then we're all upset because the season premiere was wah-wah.
Yeah, I think if you would have cut half of that season finale with half of this episode, maybe stop where the first death happened. I don't know how spoilery we're getting, but if we stop there, throw off this epic, oh my God, I can't believe he just did this, and then do the season premiere with what we saw with the second death and all that and leading up to it, this could have been a better paced thing. It could have took out some of the impact, but still gave us some shock value. There was a lot more that could have been better done with this, and I think this really exposed the pacing issues that they have with the show.
All right, let's establish this right now. If you haven't watched the season premiere of The Walking Dead, season 7, Negan's appearance, whatever happened with that episode, if you did not see this, you need to stop listening now because we are going to enter spoiler territory. So I'm going to say spoiler 2 more times, and then we're going to start spoiling the episode. Spoiler, spoiler, you've been warned. Spoilers are coming. So
how do we start that now? Like
I know. I was like, do I just be like, and Glenn and Abraham are dead? Okay, spoiled. There we go. It's out of the bag.
Well, basically, that's how it has to go now.
In the comic books, Maggie blames Rick, and I kind of let me take a few steps back. What I liked about this episode was you saw Abraham die, and not that I like that, but Abraham in the comic books died when Denise died. Denise took the arrow in the eye. In the comic books, Abraham took the arrow in the eye, and his story arc had kind of come to an end. I mean, like if he is a major player that needs to come off the board for All Out War to start, because if Negan has Abraham, a military mind, there's a better chance that Rick stands up to him. And there needs to be that kind of like, Rick needs to be smarter now. He can't just go out things with full force. And now that Abraham's off the table, that makes sense. And then you have Daryl get angry and jump up, and yes, they I think they wanted to prove the point of how brutal Negan is. And by Daryl jumping up, then he takes out another victim, and then you're like, oh, look, they're really framing up Glenn really well in this shot. Ah, shit. And there goes Glenn.
I think that was the single best moment of cinematography, direction, acting, that everything in that moment leading up to Glenn's death, I think was the best moment of that episode, because I was really like, oh, they killed Abraham. Maybe they won't do Glenn. And then as soon as the Daryl thing happened, I'm like, okay, interesting. What are we going to, maybe Daryl might lose a hand, because that's kind of a big talking point of that episode. And something comic book fans know is Rick loses a hand possibly, but he didn't lose it in this episode. So I'm like, ooh, maybe it's going to be Daryl. And then he starts walking backwards to Glenn, and I'm like, oh shit, this is awesome. And then he whacks him, and I'm like, oh man, like I can't believe they went through with that, and how they did it. That was probably the best moment of it for me. But I like how they kind of set it up to, are people going to start hating Daryl a little bit now? He's this fan favorite, beloved hero. And to see Maggie get a little angry towards this, and now I think I saw some fans online kind of start blaming Daryl. So I think that's interesting that this hero of the show now gets this like kind of this different feeling towards him.
Oh no, it's totally Daryl's fault. But that's going to be the story arc for him, is he's going to be stuck in a cage reliving, Glenn dying in his head. So that's going to be his story arc and how he matures. And since he's not in the comic book, he's the wild card of how things could differ and change and everything like that. And then Negan puts Rick in the Winnebago, and they have a conversation about who's in charge. I kind of really like that. I love that dream sequence, the mistiness, the zombies, and I know that some of the special effects weren't the best. The elongated head falling off on
horrible. Like, to have such beautiful Greg Nicotero practical effects with the Glenn and Abraham scenes, to go to a shitty CGI stretching of a zombie, very disappointing. But everything else around it was beautiful. So I try to forgive it, but that was a really big glaring issue and a great episode.
Oh, and
or a good episode.
I forgot my one emotional connection to this show, because I was just kind of disconnected with it. But when Glenn's like, I'll find you, as his eyeballs hanging out and he's about to die, or he is dead basically at that point in time, I was like, oh, that's the line. That's a line right there. Because in the comic book, he just says Maggie, but like there's still a connection, and she can still love him, and like his final thoughts is of her kind of thing. It was more connected than the comic book. And this is actually the first television episode that I liked more than the comic book.
And which is interesting, because I think, they're almost the same, but I think the way they could do it on TV was going to allow it to be better. And I'm glad it was better than worse, because I think that's the point of this TV show, is to take what the comic book did and amp it up for television and, to put it on film, because that's how it goes. You're supposed to kind of make it better. And they haven't really done that to this point. And I think this was the first time, other than the pacing of like the cliffhanger, that the deaths and the kills and how Negan was handled was probably a little bit better.
And then Negan takes Rick and goes in the RV and they drive off. And it's all about the conversation about the axe. Did you think that he threw the axe into the field, or did you think he threw the axe on top of the RV?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I think he threw it into the field. And
that's what I thought.
Yeah, I don't know why there's like a whole kind of debate about this, but yeah, I thought he threw it out there. Rick got it, and then Rick ended up there. I don't know. There was a lot of surrealism going on there, and I wish it kind of would have focused down and gone more to the shift of power between Negan and Rick, and focused a little bit more on that, because that's what I liked about that scene, and I thought that was to see Rick so weak in a moment. I thought that was interesting to see, and I was happy about that, but it got a little messy.
See, I loved all the mist and the fact that it could be almost be dream-centric at some point in time, and then it actually was dream-centric, where Rick saw the death of everybody. I mean, because Rick was just a passenger in the events of the episode. I don't really think he was he was in it, but he wasn't in it. It wasn't, for better or for worse, it was the Negan show, and you were just witnessing everything that was going on. And there was nothing. I felt powerless. Rick was definitely powerless. It accomplished everything the episode needed to do, and I really liked the mistiness and then the anger and the rage, because you still saw that Rick had stuff in him to where at some point in time he's going to fight back.
Yeah, he was almost out of it, but you saw that little bit of an anger there, and I think by the end of the episode, I think we got to see him fully break, though. I think they really like that whole Carl scene with him almost
right, and then they get back with the RV, and Negan is not convinced that Rick has become subservient, so he then threatens to chop off Carl's arm. And I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting, because this is different than the comic book. And I was like, it would be kind of funny if Carl just keeps losing body parts. I was like,
he'll look like a pirate by the end of the show.
I was like, please cut his arm. Please cut his arm. Because I was like, this will be the shock factor, and that will be the wow factor. And I was just like, I would have filmed it differently. Like the way they have it set up, where Negan cuts back, Negan cuts him off. But I would have had where Rick has his arm up to chop, and as soon as he starts to come down, I would have put the bat there. So the bat cuts the axe, because then that's a foreshadow into a later battle.
Well, yeah, that would have been a genius idea. Yeah, because that's what the show needs, is a little bit more planning for the future. I know we know what's going to happen in the future, but they rarely, I think, look ahead in the filmmaking and the foreshadowing aspect. But yeah, I think that whole scene could have took notes from how the Glenn thing was framed, even doing close-ups of Rick's eyes, Carl's eyes, right before he does. It could have been more intense, because I think as soon as that scene started playing out, I knew he wasn't losing the hand, and it started to be a little bit more obvious. But at first I was convinced. I was like, oh shit, Carl's gonna be like one arm, one eye, soon to be one leg, maybe, who knows. And it started playing out. I'm like, oh boy. And then he cut him off. But I really think the point of Negan doing it got across. I think he broke down Rick. Just the scene didn't break us down.
No, when Rick threw a snot rocket out of his face because he was so upset, I was like, oh my. I was like, this is amazing film going on right now. Like, he's really upset. There was snot coming out of his face, and I was like, wow. And then you see him just broken in the eyes. Like, oh, that's the look I wanted, blah, blah. And then Negan just kind of walks away, and it'll be interesting to see. Because in the comic books, it's a real quick transition. Like, after Negan leaves, Maggie punches him. She's like, we're going to kill him, blah, blah. And then Rick's like, no, we're not going to kill him. We're going to lay low, but we're going to rise up. And there's a few missions that happen where, like, people are building bullets and people are doing recon and some other things going on. But yeah, this is where I start to worry, like what you said, of how many episodes are we going to deal with the lack of machismo factor of Rick? Is it going to be 4 episodes of him finding himself and figuring out what's going on? Or is it going to be a whole season? Where is that going to be?
Well, already the next episode's not even about the group. While I know they focused heavily on them, the next episode is supposed to be about Carol going to the hilltop, I believe it's called, or the kingdom.
The kingdom,
Yes,
Ezekiel
yes,
and the
yes.
tiger.
So yeah, I know she starts going over there, and that's going to be that story. So there's already a break in the pacing and the break of the storytelling that we're having. Maybe we need it, maybe we don't though, and we could have done this Carol episode a little later on, or start mixing the episodes half and half. But we'll
Right.
see how it goes because I just don't want the pacing to fall off on this show like it did last season. Because last season felt like it was dragging for a while, and then he got to the finale that was literally just dragging, moving around so slowly to a finale. Now that I've seen the premiere to last finale, I think the finale is less impactful. I think that kind of took away from it. You said it should have been, this premiere should have been the finale. It would have really changed everything about it.
It would have. And then this is the next point of what you're saying, not what you're trying to say, because you're kind of saying exactly what you're saying. The point of a season is kind of a build up to the season finale. You know, the way that the new television line is going with this storytelling and not single episodes here and there, like it should be building up. You're like a DJ. You got to keep the audience moving and shaking and dancing and all this stuff. And then you build up and then you're like, oh man, I really want to watch season 8 now because it was such an amazing season finale that I have to watch season 8 now. And now you've started with the season finale and now you're going to cut it back down. And that emotional low is going to be brutal for the next 3 weeks.
Oh, no, I completely agree. I also like how your analogy was DJ. I was going to say climaxing during lovemaking as you got to build up, build up, build up. I like how our analogies are way different there. But yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a flaw here is that we're building up to kind of nothing now. We saw the craziest thing that possibly could happen until probably the end of the season. So I don't know if we're going to go through episode 2, 3, 4, and 5 just being like, not as good as the premiere, and that's not what we should be doing. We should be going steadily up, 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 and maybe we're putting too much pressure on the writers and the filmmakers, but no, that's your job. Up the ante. You upped it up. Keep going, and I hope they don't get into a really bad lull.
I hate to say it, but this episode or issue 100 of The Walking Dead was one of the most intense episodes, and then it's a very long build-up with Negan. Like Negan is still around in the comic book. So I mean like the resolution for Rick and Negan is very far off. And that's what everybody wants right now and you're not going to get it. So I don't want that thing to pay off right now, but I want it to build properly. And that's what I'm worried about just because of what I've seen Walking Dead history TV wise. They didn't really build and handle villains well. And like you said, this should be the Darth Vader of their TV show. The governor was not that great of a villain, I think. I think looking back on him, he's kind of weak compared to what I hope Negan could be. Negan's just all out like, I'm bigger than you. You're giving us our stuff. And I have hundreds of soldiers who fear me, and go from there. So, I mean, like there's those two sides. And that's the dynamic of, if you even talk about like the Revolutionary War, like the English were in America and they were fighting for something they didn't believe in kind of thing. And then you had the Americans who were like believing in independence. And that's kind of going to be the parallels of what's going on here as you have the conqueror coming in and then you have his mercenaries and they're not going to be in it as much as Rick's crew because Rick is there to inspire the crew.
That's probably the best Robert Kirkman compliment he's ever got is that you compared his work to the Revolutionary War. That was a beautiful analogy there, too. You're killing it today with these. Robert Kirkman, that should be on the title of The Walking Dead. It's like just like the Revolutionary War, but with blood and zombies.
I just don't my biggest thing that I'm worried about is that I'm gonna repeat myself is that the season premiere was the season finale and the emotional lows that we're going to have, I'm trying to figure out how they're going to write this to kind of, because with game, and I always compare things to kind of like Game of Thrones, and now I'll start comparing stuff to Westworld and just how they do things because these are supposed to be the top tier shows that are out there. But Game of Thrones kind of has a formula where they're like, we're going to scare the shit out of you or kill somebody or do something dramatic like every 3 episodes. And even when their season finale, when they have 10 episodes, so they're like, episode 8 or 9, shit's going to hit the fan and kind of just be crazy to kind of catch you off guard from the season finale of what's going on. And Walking Dead really doesn't catch you off guard that many times. You know, there's personal deaths that they've had, but now you've amped up the death factor so high with Glenn and Abraham's death at the hands of Negan. How are they, and even with Denise getting the arrow through the eye, like, how are they going to amp up the deaths or keep you engaged? Because right now I'm like, okay, Maggie and Rick are the only two. Carl, maybe. I'm like, who's a character now? I mean, Daryl. You know, like those are the 4 characters. I'm like, well, if they died, I'd be kind of, you know, that'd be kind of shocking. Everybody else,
maybe it's a time for we to stop using death as a crutch, though. I think that's a cheap storyline way of getting to use shock. Maybe torture Daryl for a season and a half, put him in a cage and make him someone's bitch. Like, I think that would be a different way of, other than killing somebody off, to break us down as viewers and break a character down and break the characters around them down. I really don't want death to be the only thing Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or any of these shows can do to shock us anymore. There needs to be more. And I think that's what sometimes using sexual assault or torture or something different to shock us, because it can't be death every time. So I know you were kind of listing off like maybe Daryl or Carl, but I'm like, no, let's do something more brutal. That's why I was kind of down for Carl's arm getting chopped off. I think that would be, I don't running gag on the show, but like kind of this thing to see Carl start losing body parts because of everyone else's stupidity. I think that would be genius. You know, there's a lot that we could do, hopefully not centered around death with Walking Dead. And I think if they can do that for me this season, that can keep me interested. And instead of just building towards a death every season finale or the premiere or like that episode 9 like Game of Thrones does, I want something different this season. Now that death is the upped ante that they did.
I don't want sexual assault. That makes everything awkward.
And I know that's not a great thing to want in film, but I've seen a lot of crazy rape and revenge movies from the 70s that I think that helps the female character come back to be the strong, awesome badass. It's another cheap ploy, but something Walking Dead doesn't even do too often, because they skipped on that. The governor was supposed to do that to Michonne. He was supposed to like rape and torture her crazy, and I think that would have made him this vile, disgusting villain, other than this kind of like whiny bitch boy he ended up being. Where I want to see Negan do that to something like Daryl. Like I said, keep him in a pen. Like he said, oh, he liked this one. Basically, like try to break down Daryl like he did Rick. I want to see just different storied things other than death, especially on a show that the death is literally walking around you. It's not that impactful anymore to me.
Interesting. Because for me, I'm still in horror film mode where I'm like, whoever survives till the end, it's like, who's going to survive? And I know that they're not all going to survive. And I mean, it kind of sucks that I'm 50 plus issues ahead in the series. So I know kind of that I know the next level shocking death where it just comes out of nowhere and sucker punches you in the chest. And it did take 50, it took half, like issue 100 was where Negan like gut punched you, but there was 3 or 4 other gut punches in there before issue 100. But then it took 50 episodes to build up to that next gut punch by Kirkman, and I was like, holy fucking shit, I cannot believe he did that. And I was like, I can't believe he did to me again what he did with the death of Glenn in the comic book. And I don't know how they're going to build up to that, because it took 50 issues for Kirkman to build that up to in the comic book. How are they going to keep a series together for 14 seasons to build up to that, you know, or 10 seasons?
Yeah, it's going to have to try to not get into a major, like, downfall of them. But I think that's what I said. Maybe instead of these gut punches that are deaths, change it up a little bit. Give us something fresh. Build Negan up as this crazy villain, or build this whole, like, we're going to get revenge, but we're going to have to, like, slowly do it. It's just all about the pacing of the show. And I think that's where this debate got started, is because we both are not fans of how the show has been paced. So I think we get a little worrisome of where their future lies, because they have the material to make a good future. It's how they handle that material.
Is it because the show is too long?
Yeah, I definitely think. Well, let's not talk about too long. Where Talking Dead was like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I was like, come on, guys.
I didn't even watch Talking Dead.
All of that is getting crazy. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, once I saw what people were in the lawn chairs and it was outside, and I was like, I have no care. I have no care for this at all. Hi, EJ. I think that we went down the rabbit hole today with Walking Dead.
This isn't going to be our only episode of Walking Dead. I feel like we're going to have to talk about this a little bit more, maybe do a part 2 of this or break down more of the season later on because we still have more to talk about. But it's interesting because that was a lot to handle and a lot to digest.
We have Doctor Strange next week, and I'm super excited for that. I know that your MCU non-friendliness will be annoying to sit next to.
Oh, I'm going to try to be optimistic because I have my things I like about Doctor Strange. So we'll see how it goes.
Hi, everybody needs to come to MegaCon this weekend and find us. We'll be in Tampa. EJ and I will be wandering around with cameras, taking pictures of cosplayers. So come to MegaCon Tampa. Hi, this is our special shout-out section before we head off to the wonders of MegaCon. Chad from Winnipeg. Just keep those comments coming strong. Eddie Harrow. I like the fact that you listened to the show 4 times this week. I appreciate it. If you would like to be in the shout-out section, all you have to do is leave a comment or listen to the show, because I can see stats on SoundCloud, and I can see who's watching. I can see who's naughty and who's been nice. Christmas is coming. Talk to you later.
Hey, Matt, we survived another episode. Oh, no!
Once again, there are several ways to continue the conversation after the show. Follow us on Twitter at monkeys_robots. You can look at all our silly photos on Instagram at monkeys fighting robots. You can follow me on Twitter at Matthew Sardo. My co-host EJ is also on Twitter at EJ Christ with a K. The biggest compliment we receive is when the subscriber number goes up on SoundCloud. If you have a chance, we'd greatly appreciate a review of our show on iTunes. All you Android users out there, listen to the show on Stitcher or Google Play. Google Play that shit. Additionally, there's this app called TuneIn. Listen to every radio station in the world, plus the Monkeys Fighting Robots podcast.
Okay, Lunchbox, let's try this again.
There are so many people that made the 97th episode of Monkeys Fighting Robots a success. Special shout out to my co-host EJ Moreno for putting up with me. I'm gonna go make him see an MCU movie next week. Can't wait. Jeff Shade is creator of our amazing intros and outros. Jessica Wynn designed the Monkeys Fighting Robots logo. Are you a monkey or are you a robot? The staff at Visual Realm built our website and keeps us up and running. To all my friends, family, and the interweb, thank you very much for your support. I'm Matt Sardo, and this is Monkeys Fighting Robots.